What is up, fight fans? This is DJC Combat, and for the first time ever, I'm doing two card prediction videos in the same week, because this weekend, we got UFC 291. The weekend after that, we got UFC Nashville, headlined by Cory, Sandhagen, and Rob Font, and co-headlined by Jessica Andrade and Tatiana Suarez. The two fights I want to talk about, not the card as a whole. I think it would just require a lot of tape study that I want to get into. And these two are the most interesting fights. So let's get into them. So we got the co-main event. Jessica Bate Estaca Andrade versus Tatiana Suarez. A lot is at stake in this matchup. And more so for Jessica Andrade than Tatiana Suarez. Because Andrade is on a 2-fight losing streak, and this isn't her first losing streak. She's lost 2 in a row before, but the 2019-20 losing streak wasn't as bad. It was a TKO loss to Wei Li, and then a split decision loss against Rose, where she did absolutely well and could have won if it was a 5-rounder. But this is the first time we've seen Jessica get stopped back to back, and her legacy is on the line here. Her job, her UFC career is on the line. And she has a lot to prove, that she's not washed up. But the UFC, they ain't doing her no favors by giving her Tatiana Suarez. Now, this is a matchup that I've wanted for 5 years, since both women were like 2 top contenders, number 2 and number 1, both, in the race to the title shot at Rose Namajunas, when both women dominated and finished their opponents at UFC 228. That was a matchup when they both fought in Dallas that I really want to see since then. Both went their separate ways. Andrade went on to win the title, as people expected. Tatiana won her title eliminator, but then dealt with a series of injuries and went 4 years without competing. Now, back then, there was a lot more hype in that matchup because, Jessica Andrade, she was on a winning streak. We hadn't seen her lose in a while. She'd only had 1 loss in the strawweight division. That was to Joanna. And it seemed like style-wise, she matched up well with a dominant wrestler like Tatiana Suarez, because Andrade herself was known for good wrestling, being strong, picking girls up, but also having hella hands, crazy power, very imposing pressure. Up against someone like Tatiana, who is only known for one strength, the wrestling, but we haven't really seen her striking tested all that much. So at the time, the matchup seemed interesting. It was like an unstoppable force, Tatiana Suarez, versus an immovable object, Jessica Andrade. But fast forward 5 years later, Jessica Andrade is the movable object. Tatiana is still the unstoppable force that she was 5 years ago. Since then, Andrade has went on to lose 5 times and get finished in 4 out of her 5 losses. She's been getting finished, either TKO'd or submitted, and she's been getting brutalized in all of those losses. And now she's fighting Tatiana Suarez, a very bad stylistic matchup for herself, simply due to the wrestling difference, between the two. Jessica Andrade has decent wrestling and she is strong, but strength does not win wrestling. It's the technique and experience that Tatiana has, and Andrade cannot wrestle with Tatiana Suarez. She has to worry about the takedown threat in this fight, and it also doesn't help that she is the smaller fighter. She's shorter. So even though, yes, she's powerful and good at closing the distance and she's got that brawling ability, there is that factor that Tatiana does have to watch out for. It's beneficial for Suarez being the taller fighter. Jessica has to come to her. She has to close the distance if she wants to land, and that's just going to lead to Tatiana inevitably getting a hold of her. And once she does, I believe she'll have no problem getting this fight to the ground. And once she does, it's going to be all Tatiana Suarez because she's so much better on the ground. You got the top control of Tatiana Suarez, the positional control that she has, how she's able to hold women down, by controlling the wrist, controlling the legs, controlling the head. all that technique that she uses, and being able to use her weight effectively versus Andrade, who off her back is not very good. Despite being a black belt in jiu-jitsu, when she's off her back, she looks lost. She's like a fish out of water, and she tries to explode her way out of positions with her strength and athleticism. And usually that works, but I don't think that's going to work against someone with the caliber of wrestling of Tatiana Suarez. I think Tatiana is going to be able to hold Jessica Andrade down like Shevchenko was able to do. Let's not forget, Valentina Shevchenko, who's not half the wrestler Tatiana is, was able to take down Jessica, keep her down, and maul her and finish her on the ground. And not too long ago, we just saw Jessica Andrade get completely out-wrestled and submitted by Erin Blanchfield. And there's a lot of openings that Andrade leaves when trying to get back to her feet. She usually does give up her back. Erin Blanchfield capitalized on that beautifully. She does not stay calm when she's on the ground. She's always in a hurry to get back up. And against Tatiana, I see the same thing happening. I see her suffering the same fate, making the same mistake, and Tatiana finding the exact same opening that Erin was able to find. And I think Tatiana Suarez is going to get a submission against Jessica Andrade. I think she'll be able to pass guard. I think she'll win the transitions against Jessica Andrade, advance to even more dominant positions on the ground, and I can see her getting the full mount and Andrade giving up her back, Tatiana flattening her out, getting the rear naked choke. Or maybe Jessica sits up against the cage, Tatiana has the front headlock, and gets like a guillotine similar to how Jones finished off Cyril Gane. I can also picture that. But I do see Tatiana getting a finish in this fight. And I think it's going to be in the first round. Tatiana Suarez, man, I got to pick her because she's got momentum and she's got confidence. Jessica Andrade is the one who's on the losing streak. 2 back-to-back finishes inside a calendar year. Whereas Tatiana, this is now her second fight in 6 months, as opposed to before the Montana fight. That was like her first fight in 4 years. There was a lot of unknowns, a lot of unanswered questions like, is she even going to be the same fighter that she was when she was on a tear in the strawweight division from like 2016 to 19 before that injury took her out for 4 years? And we got our answers. Like, Tatiana Suarez looked just as good as ever and just as dominant as she's always looked. And she's still undefeated. Tatiana Suarez is still dangerous. She's still formidable, whereas Jessica Andrade, she's clearly getting worse. Now, I understand that Tatiana Suarez, she's coming off a win over a can, but it doesn't matter. She's got her confidence back, by getting at least a fight under her belt and a dominant win along with a dominant finish. And I think moving forward now, Tatiana Suarez is going to look even better in this fight than she looked in her last fight. And overall, I just think Tatiana is going to be the one making improvements to her game, whereas Jessica Andrade, this is as good as she's ever going to get. She's peaked in her career already, and now she's on the downslide. Now she's on the decline. She's had a decent run. She's fought for the title in both weight classes. In one weight class, she won the belt, lost the belt, tried to get in another division, failed. But now she's no longer a top fighter in either division. And I just think she's figured out now. She's figured out. I think she just ran her course in her career in terms of being a top fighter. Now she's just fighting women that are better, and she's getting older. I know Tatiana is actually older than her, but Jessica has a lot more miles on the clock, a lot more fights, and I think that's kind of taking a toll on her body. Whereas Tatiana, all in all, is going to be the more fresher fighter. She's going to come out a lot more confident, whereas I believe Jessica's confidence with this recent losing streak and getting finished has just taken a hit. And in her last fight, she just looked so terrible against Yan Xiaonan. She looked lost, didn't look like she had a plan, didn't look like she knew what she was doing. and got her clock clean. And if she looks anything like she did in her last fight, she's going to get destroyed, man. I just believe the timing of this matchup, it's fortunate for Tatiana, but unfortunate for Andrade. A few years ago, this is a fight that Andrade could have won, but in 2023, this is where Jessica Andrade loses, and loses badly, and gets sent on her way. I think she's just going to be a stepping stone that's going to get Tatiana Suarez in the top 5 and get her closer to that long-awaited title shot. And I think that Tatiana Suarez, she already has 2 champions on her resume that she's beaten. I think Andrade is going to be the 3rd one. Add to that collection. Now, moving on to the main event of the evening in the bantamweight division. Cory Sandhagen versus Rob Font. Originally, it was going to be Umar Nurmagomedov against Cory Sandhagen, and it was going to be Rob Font versus Yadong, but things worked out differently. Yadong got injured, and Umar got injured, so I guess maybe down the line they can do Umar versus Song. And right now we got Sandhagen versus Font, which honestly this matchmaking makes more sense. It's a lot better. It sucks for Font that he doesn't get to fight in front of his home crowd of Boston, but it is what it is. For Font's career, this fight is much better because he's fighting a top 3 contender and former title challenger in Cory Sandhagen. You got the boxing heavy style in Rob Font. Font's got some great hands. One of the best boxers in the men's bantamweight division, going up against one of the most dynamic overall strikers in the men's bantamweight division in Cory Sandhagen. Rob Font is fresh off his first round knockout win over Adrian Yanez, where he just snapped his losing streak, and he proved the world wrong. We all doubted him, like including myself. You know, he made me look foolish for doubting him. He destroyed Yanez, but he's got a much tougher opponent in Cory Sandhagen. Cory Sandhagen is more of a veteran than Adrian Yanez. He's got more experience than Adrian Yanez. I think he's more durable than Yanez, and I think he's got more tools than Adrian Yanez. Cory right now is the established top contender that Adrian Yanez yet isn't. You know what I mean? Cory's been there and done that. He's fought for the world title. He's fought a lot of big names and world champions. Much better fighter than Yanez and way harder to beat. And even though Font looked good in his last fight and he's a good boxer, this is not a boxing match. I think to beat Cory Sandhagen, you have to have some level of grappling threat. You got to be well-rounded. You got to be able to threaten him on the feet and on the ground. You know, whereas Font, I don't think he has that. It's just his boxing and his power. That's all Cory has to worry about. Whereas I feel like for Font on his end, he has a lot more to worry about facing Cory Sandhagen, because Cory is a lot more crafty of a striker. You know, he's got the kicks. He can strike from many different angles. He's faster. And also now he's implementing some offensive wrestling into his game. He can threaten takedowns on Rob Font. He can take down Rob Font. He also manages distance a lot better than Adrian Yanez did. So I think Font is going to have a harder time catching Cory because he's so elusive. And his footwork is so much better than Rob Font. Rob Font stands linear, flat-footed. Cory moves lateral. So I think it's going to be a tough night for Rob Font. Cory can dictate wherever this fight goes, whether it's on the feet. You know, he can win a full-on kickboxing match, maybe implement some clinch work like damage with knees in the Muay Thai plum, or he can wrestle. He can take down Rob Font. Even if some of his takedowns don't get through, Font has to think about the takedowns. He's got to watch out for some of the flashy kicks of Cory Sandhagen, some of the unorthodox combos of Cory Sandhagen. So ultimately, I favor Cory to win this fight. I think Font is going to go back to his losing ways. And I think Cory's going to win this fight by a decision. Rob Font is tough enough to hang in there. He will have some moments where he lands, but it will be too far in between. Cory will eat whatever shots that do get through. And he's going to land a lot of good counters, get some takedowns, have more output. Cory is just, he's younger, and he's constantly improving. And he's looked so good in his last 2 fights over Yadong and Chito Vera. So I think Cory gets this done. And I think it'll be a relatively dominant decision, maybe 50-45 or 49-46. if I'm being generous. But I think right now, I think anytime these two fight, I would always favor Cory, whether it's a few years ago or even now. I think Sandhagen was always better than Rob Font. But in 2023, this version of Cory in his prime, on a trajectory towards a world title, I don't think Font is going to be the one to stop him. So, yeah, Cory's got this one. But that's it for my breakdown and prediction for UFC Nashville for the co-main and main event. Let me know your picks in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe, and peace out.